Welcome back to another Senators One-on-One. I'm Bruce Garrioch, but today we're going to switch gears and talk about the Ottawa Charge as they face the Boston Fleet in the first round of the PWHL playoffs. And I'm pleased to be joined by our PWHL beat writer, Natasha Baldin. Natasha, as we speak today, the Charge and Boston Fleet are tied 1-1 in their first round series for the Walker Cup. Let's start with a recap of the first two games of the series as it switches to Ottawa for Game 3 on Friday at the Canadian Tire Centre.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Bruce. So I guess just Game 1 ended in that 2-1 loss for Ottawa. Ottawa went down 1-0 in that series. And there were lots of nerves on that Charge bench to start off. I think Jocelyne Larocque said it best after the game, that the team was just gripping their sticks too tight. There were lots of rookies on that team who had never really been in playoff hockey before. And I think Ottawa just really didn't know how physical that matchup was going to be. We knew it was going to be physical. Everyone was, the coaches, the coaching staff, the veterans knew that Boston was kind of come out swinging.
Yeah.
I don't think we knew it was going to be that physical. There were 8 penalties called in that first period. Ottawa just never had the chance to get its groove, to get its rhythm with that many whistles, with that many interruptions in play and line shuffles. They just really never got the time to get settled in that game. And it really showed. There were just lots of different turnovers. Their penalty kill was a bright spot in that game, but their power play went 1 for 6. But there were times as well when they never really got a shot on net on one of those power plays. So I think it was just, lots of nerves kind of dominated that game, and Boston just capitalized on that. And that was really the story of that one. But then Game 2, Ottawa came away with that 3-1 win, which was really huge to kind of even that series at 1 heading back to Ottawa. And you really kind of saw the Charge come into their game. We saw them kind of start to play the hockey that we've been enjoying them play all season long, and the nerves went away a little bit. We saw offense from different parts of the lineup, which is something that Ottawa has always really prided themselves on. We're really seeing the defenders kind of step up in this game and, take some of those high shots from the blue line, like we saw with Rania Savalainen in that first period. And that's just for really seeing the Charge step into who they are. And Fenuza Katarova doubled that lead in the second period with a one-timer from the faceoff dot. And again, that's just kind of classic Charge hockey and just finding ways to find the back of the net and just kind of give that series some life and just kind of find ways to not only have some success on the rush, but really find some time to sustain that offensive zone pressure, be heavy on the forecheck, and just kind of find ways to solve Boston, who is such a strong defensive team. We're tied at 1-1 now, and Game 3 is happening in Ottawa on Friday.
It's interesting because Boston goalie Aaron Frankel is probably one of the best goalies in the world in women's hockey. And they scored twice on her in 20 minutes. Probably seized the momentum in that game. How important is it for them to kind of keep that up through the course of this series?
Oh, yeah, it's tremendously important. As you mentioned, Erin Frankel is one of the best, if not the best, goalie in women's hockey right now. And if you look at her numbers, she hasn't allowed more than 2 goals in her last 11 consecutive starts, including games 1 and 2 of these playoffs. That final goal was an empty netter in Ottawa's 3-1 win. Anything you can really get past her is a gift. And it's also, the Charge are treating it as a bit of a learning opportunity of, you get one buyer, hey, that works, let's try that again. So the Charge were asked a lot of questions, even coming into this series on, how to beat Frankel. And we were hearing over and over again from, no matter who you talk to, the players, the coaching staff, high volume of shots on net and traffic in front. And honestly, this was one of the worries heading into this series for me, because the Charge are such a rush team. They find a lot of their offense going into the offensive zone on that primary chance. And they may not always have the time to set up with that body in front of the net for that tip, for that flash screen on that primary chance. But I think kind of what we're really seeing from them is they're finding ways to sustain that ozone pressure, which has just been really, really key here. And just kind of letting them set up, letting them put a body in front of the net. And then Frankel's a bit of a smaller goalie. So we're seeing that's maybe one of the things that she has working against her. So we're seeing the Charge kind of bring that puck back to the blue line and fire a high shot on net. Just kind of see what happens. We've seen a tip work in the Game 1. We saw that tip off of a Rory Gilday shot and Jocelyne Larocque was in front of the net. And then in Game 2, we saw Rania Savalainen shot and it just kind of buzzed its way through traffic and into the back of the net. So we're seeing the Charge try that, and it's working for them. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them go back to that play.
Natasha, when you get into the playoffs, to make a difference, your best players have to be your best players. But I also think there has to be an X factor in there sometimes. And, the Senators in their first round series never had an X factor, right? And I always thought going into the playoffs that perhaps a guy like Fabian Zetterlund could be their X factor. It didn't work out. Their goalie was great. But I guess this is a roundabout way for me to say, we know who the Charge's top players are, but who could be their X factor in this series? Someone who maybe we aren't expecting, and maybe we've already seen that.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a lot, even in this conversation, about the importance of defenders and kind of getting some offense from them. And I'll go back to that, and I'll just say my X factor in this series is going to be Jocelyne Larocque. She may be more of an obvious pick. If you look at the numbers for this series, she's leading the team in scoring right now. She's got a goal and 2 assists so far. But she wouldn't have been my X factor pick heading into this series. She's not really known for her offensive drive, much more of a shutdown defender. And she's also the oldest player in the league right now. She's averaging a league high of 20 or a team high of 24 minutes a game this series, which is pretty cool as well. And I think just she's kind of really solidifying how important these two-way defenders are in this series. We've seen her on the power play in front of the net, tipping those shots and acting as a really good screen. We've seen her making those big passes to connect with the forwards and start that rush play. And she's just showing that she has such a strong hockey IQ, and that she can not only use that to box out those defenders in the D zone, but she can also kind of start taking some of those chances in the offensive zone. And that's really capitalizing for her. So I'm really excited to see what she has in store for games 3 and 4. She's just such a strong veteran presence on the bench, on the ice as well. And I think the younger players really look up to her for that.
People are excited here in Ottawa because the Charge will move to the Canadian Tire Centre for the next 2 games of the series, Friday night and Sunday. I looked at tickets before we spoke, and for Friday, certainly they were minimal. There's 2 things here. Number one, does this hurt the Charge's home ice advantage, or do you think it helps?
I mean, there's arguments for both, for sure. You can certainly say it hurts their home ice advantage because it's a rink they're not familiar with at the end of the day. They've played 2 games there in the history of the team. They don't know the ice as well. They don't know how the boards bounce, little things like that. They're not even practicing there until Thursday this week. I think it's because they're setting that logo at center ice, which looks great. I think it needs time to set before they can skate on it. So there's definitely an argument that they don't have the home ice advantage. TD Place has kind of become their home, and they're so familiar with it. But you hear this team say over and over again that they have the best fans in the league. And I think that's really going to kind of make a difference in this series. If these fans come and show up to CTC, if they manage to fill it like they did in April, and, fans bring their kazoos, fans bring their signs and really make it feel like home, I think that'll really be the difference to kind of help the Charge settle into a venue that may otherwise seem unfamiliar. If the fans in the stands are those familiar faces for them, I think that'll be huge. And, Charge fans have already we've seen them show up to CTC earlier in April when more than 17,000 fans were in that building. That was a game against Montreal, and Corey Sharbury was even saying post-game that it was so loud in there she couldn't really talk to her players during the TV timeouts. It was just, it was a really cool atmosphere to be part of. So if that was regular season hockey, it'll be cool to see what postseason hockey brings.
Well, and I only ask that because we always say, like if you look at they've played in that, just they're not familiar with the rink, right? But do you think they've played their last game at Lansdowne? Do you feel like, as we sit here, that we're probably looking at some sort of permanent move to the Canadian Tire Centre until the Senators move downtown?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's been announced yet officially, but I do think that we saw our last Charge hockey at TD Place. It was, even last week, there was one of the practices before the team went off to Boston, and at the end the team did their cheer at center ice, and instead of saying "Go Charge," they all said "Bye TD." So I think we all know what's coming, the players included. It's kind of just a matter of time at this point. So I think this will be a really good test to see kind of what the market's like in Canada for playoff hockey, and what they can expect for attendance in the regular season next year and going forward.
I ran into Jeff Leeper, the city councilor, who's a Charge season ticket holder. Actually, last weekend at my high school reunion. But one thing he says, he's an original season ticket holder, and he thinks the Charge have told him that they think that they can get new ticket holders in Canada. Do you believe that's the case?
I think so. I think they're definitely going to lose some from some of the downtown fans who,
Yep.
aren't really willing to make the trip out to Canada, especially those who don't drive. It's a pretty brutal commute on the bus. But I mean, there probably are some fans out there in the West End in Canada who are saying the same thing about how it's really brutal to get downtown, to get to TD Place, even in a car. Like parking around that Lansdowne area has been notoriously bad. So
Yeah.
I do think that there are probably some West End fans, even reaching as far as Carp, as Fitzroy in that area, who have been wanting to go to more games, but just haven't had the chance. So to have a venue a bit closer to them, I do think we'll see a bit of a resurgence in those season ticket holders. I don't know if it's going to be an increase because I think we will lose a significant amount as well, but I think it'll kind of all even out in the end.
Well, Natasha, thank you for your time today. I hope that we'll do this again in the next round. For the Ottawa Citizen, I'm Bruce Garrioch. Pleased to be joined today by Natasha Baldin, of our beat writer for the Charge. For Charge One-on-One, see, I corrected myself now. I'm Bruce Garrioch.